And it's brat time. Welcome back in. A busy couple of days since we've had a chance to visit with Michael Bratton from That SEC Podcast. So, Michael, this is kind of a crazy question, but That SEC Podcast, are you aware that the SEC does not have a team in the national championship game?
Yeah, we may be changing the name to the Big Ten Podcast if things continue to trend the way they have here the last couple of years. You know what?
So, what are you hearing from your denizens of fans after what happened on Friday night and the world stopped spinning on its axis for the SEC?
Well, to be honest with you, Paul, it's not the SEC fans that are freaking out. It's the Big Ten people that have invaded the South. My numbers have never been better, Paul, and it's mostly Ohio State and Penn State and Notre Dame people just laughing at the SEC. So, yeah, I get it. They've been under the thumb for a couple of decades, so they need their moment here. But maybe it's sour grapes, but I certainly feel like this is a one-off, and this is not going to be an annual type thing. I mean, heck, just look no further than Michigan as they cheated their way to a national championship. Where were they this year? They were never really in the conversation once Texas waxed them, and I think it'll be the same next season when Texas opens at Ohio State and thrashes the Buckeyes in Columbus.
Yeah, Michigan ended the season in a bowl game. I don't know how they did, but we'll catch up on that after the show. Michael, my big question to you is this, because I've been asked it a couple of times today, and I have to confess I don't have a good answer. So how are we collectively as SEC fans, which I know there are many watching, you as well on your podcast, how are we supposed to act over these next 7 days as we march toward Atlanta and must be subjected to this game on Monday night?
Well, I don't know about you, Paul, but the season ended for me late last week when Texas went down, and I don't even know that if there is another college football game the rest of the season. So I probably won't be watching it. So we just I think I've heard you say we got to hang our heads and take it. I mean, that's the reality of the situation because Ohio State looks like far and away the best team. They went through two of the SEC teams, and heck, if they would have faced Georgia, I'm pretty confident that they would have smashed Georgia too. So, like I said, it's their time, it's their year. That's nice. But as soon as Ryan Day drops a game, whether it be this championship or to Texas, I'm sure his fans, his great fans, are going to be calling for his job once again.
I'm glad you brought that up because I can't tell you how many Ohio State fans harassed me at midnight in Dallas Friday, and you know, hey, are you gonna? I mean, and I wanted to kind of fight back, but I looked at the numbers, and I was with Tim Tebow, and I think Tebow could have handled a couple of thousand of them. I'm not sure I could have handled any, and I just wanted to say what you just got through saying. It wasn't you, it wasn't me, who said Ryan Day needs to get fired. It was Ohio State fans.
Yeah, and again, I mean, let's say Ohio State does win the championship, which they're heavily favored to do against the luck of the Irish there. But even if they do, I mean, can Michigan claim half a championship or something? Because last time I checked, they own Ohio State. And again, I mean, which is a superior program, Ohio State or Michigan? I think we all know the answer. It's Michigan by a country mile, as we would say down here.
So what about the SEC? Let's look ahead a little bit. Texas, stop me if you've heard this. Steve Sarkisian, the best play caller in America. Were you thinking that as Jack Sawyer was running down the opposite side of the field for the clinching touchdown on Friday night?
I think he officially lost that title on that play before when it was a sweep, don't you, Paul? I mean, that was a disaster. But again, Texas, now that this is 2 years in a row that they made the college football playoff, made it to the Final Four, and come up so. I mean, it was almost eerily similar with the Washington game where they had their opportunities late in that game, came up just short. We know the money they got down there. I think Texas is just going to keep chopping, and it's easy to make fun of these coaches and these programs when they fall just short. But I think Texas is here to stay, and as long as Sarkisian doesn't jump to the NFL, I think Texas will probably win a national championship before long.
So as we look at, we have three SEC teams in the playoffs. Let's talk about, you mentioned Texas. Let's get to Georgia and Tennessee as we close down the season for the elite teams of the SEC. What do you see coming up next year?
Well, Kirby Smart in Georgia, now they're finally spending in NIL, bringing in some big transfers at the receiver position. So maybe a little bit of a revenge tour. They have had mock revenge tours claiming 7-5 was their predictions. No one in their right mind predicted that, but people are burying the SEC. I think they're burying Kirby Smart and particularly his offense. Now with Carson Beck, of course, jumping to Miami, I wonder if there's a little internal motivation that wasn't there the last couple of years. And I think Georgia is still the team to beat in the SEC. Quarterback and offensive coordinator is still a big question mark. Not saying those are bad positions, but I don't know if they have championship players and coaches in those positions. But still, I think Georgia, as long as Kirby Smart's down there running the defense, the team to beat. Tennessee, I don't know, Paul. I was trying to think of the players they're bringing back next year. It's basically Nico, and then it's a lot of question marks. So if Tennessee were to make the college football playoff next year, I think that would be the best coaching job Josh Heupel's done to date. I don't think Tennessee's got a shot right now based on what their roster looks like today.
You have LSU number 3. I know for the next 7 days, Brian Kelly will be sitting in timeout as Notre Dame fans punch at the pinata. But you seem pretty high on them next year.
Yeah, the way I hear it, Brian Kelly's a big golfer in the offseason. I would recommend don't hit the course one time. I mean, he needs to spend all his hours working on improving his LSU team. There are all chips on the table. This is the same guy that says we don't buy players, and they had a down season. Next I look, Paul, they're buying every player available in the transfer portal. So they've got to get it done. Hopefully Notre Dame making all the way to the championship inspires Brian Kelly. If they don't get it done next season, I don't think they're ever going to get it done under Brian Kelly. And maybe they hired the wrong Notre Dame coach.
Well, talking to Michael Bratton, Alabama, they were on your list, weren't they?
Yeah, Alabama, I think, is right there. Again, Kalen DeBoer, I've said it. I think if they don't make the playoff in a 12-team era, obviously, 2 years in a row, I don't think he sees year 3 in Tuscaloosa. So all the pressure in the world on Kalen DeBoer. I think the defense could be the best in the SEC next season. So it's in his corner. He's the offensive guru, right? So we'll see what he can do with a quarterback of his choosing this year. I'm not sure Jalen Milroe would. I'm not placing the blame on Jalen Milroe. That to me is still Kalen DeBoer should have done better with Milroe. But now that he's going to have a quarterback of his choosing, the offense has got to do its part. They have got to make the college football playoff. And quite honestly, Paul, I don't even think that's enough. They need to contend for the national championship next season.
Michael, you had Missouri way down, Oklahoma way down. Obviously, Drinkwitz has had a couple of really good years. They've been quiet good years for whatever reason. But what about Oklahoma? I know you got a lot of fans out there, but that would be a dreadful position if they can't do any better than way down near the bottom of the league.
Right. All the Oklahoma fans I gained, I think I'm losing them quickly, Paul, because I'm just telling it like it is. I don't know what promising outlook they think they're going to get with the schedule. It gets even more difficult. They're blowing up the offense. Both coordinators are going to be new hires for the second consecutive offseason. Didn't go too well last season. I don't know how they can have any expectation short of maybe making a bowl. And all I heard last offseason, learning from all these great fans, was it's championships or bust at Oklahoma. And I mean, I think Vanderbilt's got a better shot at making the college football playoff than Oklahoma, and that's goes directly to the feet of Brent Venables, who I don't know why he's still the coach.
Ooh, pretty dramatic shift here from the Michael Bratton I saw on July 1st, sweltering in the 103-degree heat in Norman as we were welcoming the Sooners to the SEC. A couple more before you go. Lane Kiffin. He's been talking more than anybody in the offseason. What do you like about them for next year, if anything?
Well, again, Paul, remember, he said he didn't want to go to the SEC championship. I think he's safe again. He doesn't have to worry about that next year, I don't think, with a retooled roster. But, this is going to be interesting because Ole Miss, aside from Georgia, aside from Alabama, they've been the most consistent program in this conference the last 4 or so years. So I don't think there's going to be a drastic drop-off. Can they win these one-score games? They couldn't do it last year. And I don't think the roster is going to be as good, but if you can kind of flip that and start winning some of these one-possession games, they could make the college football playoff. I think they're a dark horse, hearing great things about their next quarterback, Austin Simmons, kind of a 2.0 down there in Oxford. If that's what they're really getting, I think Ole Miss is a very dangerous team next year.
And a couple more. like many, you've had a lot to say about Billy Napier. You seem to have revisited that territory.
My New Year's resolution, Paul, I'm not speaking ill of Billy Napier until his next embarrassing loss. So he's safe for a couple of months until at least the season kicks off. But they got some tricky games right out the gate. They're at Miami, which now has Carson Beck. They're at LSU. If they've got to navigate these types of games, because I think DJ Lagway, not only the best quarterback in the SEC, I think he could be the best quarterback in the country. And if he is that, Florida, believe it or not, Paul, I think they could be a playoff dark horse themselves. They have a gauntlet again, but they managed it last season. If they can do it again, I think that's a team to really watch, as could be one of the biggest surprises in the SEC next fall.
Auburn has had two pretty disastrous seasons under Hugh Freeze. What do you see for year 3?
Well, none of that was his fault, of course, Paul, so we can't call that out or anything. But he's bringing in a quarterback, Jackson Arnold, ultimate wild card. I mean, I don't know how you judge him based on what they did at Oklahoma this year. With the offensive line was an issue. Receivers all got hurt. The coordinator got fired halfway through the season. Was that Jackson Arnold's fault, or is he a victim of it? We're going to find out next season on the Plains, because Auburn, this is a roster they've assembled year 3. They're active in the transfer portal. They're active in recruiting. There's no excuses, no more for Hugh Freeze. This has got to be a big-time year. I think they are also a playoff dark horse. And how about this one, Paul? Iron Bowl. Whoever loses that game, Hugh Freeze or Kalen DeBoer, gets fired immediately after.
Ooh, wow. I don't want to end on that note. It's too depressing. Texas A&M, there was a moment where they were a playoff team. Everyone loved them, and then they let it all slip away.
Well, I've made another vow, Paul, to my audience. I'll make it to yours. I will never, ever, ever hype up Texas A&M, or excuse me, Texas 8-4, until they actually do something on the field. They got all the pieces. I think Mike Elko's a heck of a coach. I actually like what I saw from Marcel Reed till late in the season. So, they got everything there. But they've got to get it done until we actually see it. Again, I'm not hyping them up. Give me 8-4 for them, which should be a disappointment, but I think that's par for the course down there.
Finally, I am old enough to have remembered about a year and a half ago when Mark Stoops said Kentucky was a football school.
Yeah, whatever happened to that, Paul? I mean, goodness. Speaking of saved by the buyout, I think that's the only reason he's down there. And those were, that seems like decades ago, Paul. And that was, I think that was about 6 months ago. So I don't know what they do there, because I'm struggling to even think, because the offense was so bad. They averaged 14 points per game in conference play. This was supposed to be a tough, hard-nosed, defensive running football program, and they have completely lost their identity. I have no idea what they're doing at Kentucky, and it's a shame, because Stoops was right. They were right on the cusp of being a football program, but they're back to being a basketball program, and I hate it for them. Michael
Bratton, Daily Dose on the SEC podcast, which will be renamed that Big Ten podcast after Monday night. Michael, thank you. Appreciate it. We are taking a short break here. Your phone calls are straight around the corner.